I'm on my way to do a plein air painting in Tokyo, and I thought I'd take you along with me to do an urban landscape painting from start to finish. Today, I'm going to share with you how I simplify a complicated and overwhelming urban landscape scene. So this is the scene that I'm thinking, but I'm gonna crop it long ways like this. I'm gonna get the underpass underneath it, the building here, and the street going that way. I'm gonna cut off, I think, this side and get a little bit of that building in and kind of do a tall painting. Got my setup here, ready to go. Those are my colors. That's the scene. So step one is the most basic of things, but it's not easy to do and it takes some practice. I started plein air painting in the countryside. There was less people watching, there was less pressure to learn and paint quickly. I painted in North Carolina where there were hills, trees, barns, and it was just much easier to boil a scene down to its simplest form. But in the city, you're often up close. You see every little detail. You not only have to worry about trees on the road, but you have to worry about windows, doors, people, cars, birds, power lines, signs, and all kinds of things that are just right in your face. It's very hard to have that same mindset of when you're painting in the country, when it's more peaceful and things can be put at a distance. You have to take the same approach. It's just that it's harder to do for some reason. So at the basic level, the drawing has to be simplified. It's very easy, especially with a city landscape, to get bogged down in drawing too much. You want to get all that detail in before you even start laying the paint on the canvas, and you start to overdraw things. You really need to step back and do the same thing that you would do in the countryside. You need to step back and you need to look at the shapes. You know, this is a rectangle, this is a square. So you're identifying the biggest shapes that are in front of you. There's plenty of time for detail later, but right now, the first step is to do a simplified drawing of the basic shapes that are in front of you. This brush is hard as a rock. step two for me is prioritizing what needs to be in the painting. So I'm looking at the scene and I'm thinking, what do I need to make this painting work? How will it be recognizable as buildings? And so I prioritize the most important things I begin to paint first. And then the least important things I paint last. So for instance, the shadows on the building are a must. So I'll begin with something like that, where I begin to put in the values that make up the forms that are absolutely necessary for this scene to work. I don't worry about all the little details and all the little color accents yet. I'm just trying to make the building recognizable as a building. And then I move through the scene. For instance, the bridge underneath. It can't just look like this empty space in the foreground where there's a cluster of buildings floating somewhere in the middle of the painting. There has to be some way to recognize that this is an overpass and there's a bridge and there's a train moving above it and there's cars moving under it. So I need to make that recognizable. So when you get down to it, at the end of the day, the form of things is much more important than the details in the things. So step two is to prioritize the form that makes the shapes of the things you're painting instead of all those little details that are unnecessary. Actually put some of the sky blue into that shadow color. Still not loud enough. Sunlight is messing with me. I have to move. Once the necessary things are in place and it starts to look like a scene, that's when I start thinking about color and adjusting values and perspective and things in the distance. So for instance, I realized that the shadows in the distance were too dark. Things that are closer to you are going to have darker shadows, and things in the distance are going to be a little bit more dulled down from the atmosphere. Notice I'm still not thinking about any kind of detail yet. I'm still thinking about what makes the scene work. Where do I need to adjust things? How are the shapes looking? How is the value reading? And I haven't even started on drawing any kind of detail. It really is still just shapes and value at this point. Some movement in the sky, some clouds. Some like a cloud logo. Another thing that I find somewhat tricky when doing a city landscape, most of what you see is gray. And it would be very easy to just paint everything in different shades of grays. So I was careful to try to put in, enough yellow ochre, enough red, permanent yellow into the scene so that it looked like there was some warmth. Some more green. Some gray. Can't get this right. Too light, too dark. Another trick that I've been using to create the illusion of detail is to take a palette knife and scrape into the painting in some of the areas that you want to suggest some detail, and you're cutting into the paint, and it's very subtle, but it enables you to somewhat draw into your painting, kind of like if you were sketching on a notepad. You feel that there's some sort of texture difference there, and there's lines, and there's things that your eye is not fully recognizing in the painting, and it makes it just a little bit more interesting, and the illusion that there is a little bit more detail. This is obviously a very complicated scene, not just because of all the details from the city, but there's also movement in the scene. So I try to incorporate a train zipping past through the scene right above the bridge there and in front of the buildings. And I'm not sure if it reads exactly right, but the way that I tried to make this work and recognizable as a moving train, I limited the detail on the train, and then I tried to make some of the train very soft around the edges, kind of like it's a blur. And then what detail I did put in it, like the windows on the train, I made them elongated, longer than the windows would be if it was sitting still. And it almost looks irregular. It looks like there's streaks. And so hopefully that creates this illusion that there's some sort of movement there. Don't think of yourself as a painter. Think of yourself as a magician. You're creating illusions. They don't have to be exact. They don't have to be precise. They just need to give a feeling of what you're trying to convey. So create the illusion of detail. While I'm painting details, I'm not actually trying to be extremely accurate or detailed. I'm really more trying to suggest things. So if I were sketching something and using a pencil, I would have to be more accurate in order to make it read. But for a painting, you have a lot of different ways you can make something read. The value in the color and the shape and the texture of the paint all works together to suggest form. In the distance where there are cars and there's a stoplight, you can barely see what I've done with my little brush. Honestly, you'd have to step all the way up to the painting to notice these little things. So when I'm putting in these details, I'm putting in the taillights of the cars, I'm putting in trees, I'm putting in signs. Those technically, I guess, are details to make the painting more interesting. But even the details are not detailed. They're still just shapes and lines and dots and circles, nothing more. So just like when the painting first started, step one is to draw the basic shapes of things, the rectangles and squares, the circles, the buildings, the basic outline of things. The final step is very much the same, except on a smaller level. Don't think of painting details. Don't think of painting things. Think of painting lines and shapes and dots. For a window, paint a tiny square. For the stoplights in the distance, paint tiny little red dots. Don't overthink it, simplify it.
日本語が下手です。下手、上手じゃない。上手じゃない。日本語が勉強します。でも難しい。とても難しい。
私のお父さん
お父さん
はフランス人で、
おお、フランス人。
フランス語を話せる
お母さん
日本人です。
こんにちは。
私はハーフです。
ハーフ日本人、ハーフフランス人。
ジャパンとフランス。そこぐらい。
すごい。かっこいい。フランス、かっこいい。
よくじゃあ僕やってます。
I let this kid paint. I think he tried to sign my name for me. I'm not sure. He's a cute kid. So just to kind of recap my very simple approach to painting a complicated scene. Next time you're out and you get overwhelmed by all the detail in a scene or everything that's going on, just take a deep breath and stop and think about what is the most important thing. Prioritize the scene, what is absolutely necessary to make it work, and then work your way backward from the most important thing to the least important things. There's time to put in some details, but even in the details, there are most important details and less important details. So thanks for watching. If this video has blessed you in some way, please like and subscribe, and come with me again on the streets to paint in plein air. Navy blue strip on this train before I stop. See if I can get this in the sunlight.